I'd like to think the 158 men and women who perished in Afghanistan are looking down and shaking their heads saying, look after my friends. Don't build me memorials. Look after my friends. They need it. Their souls are torn. Their flesh is torn.
The training the Canadian Forces offers to its medics is unparalleled, I think, in Western armies or in armies, period, and extraordinarily brave. You know, Canadian got hit, the medic was coming. No matter what, the medic was coming.
It's very hard when you know that you could do everything right and somebody still dies. If I put that tourniquet on a little quicker, if we had put the IV in quicker, or got them breathing faster, would they have lived? And the hard realization is that people just die. And you could do everything right, and you're not going to save a life.
Do you remember everything up to the attack?
It's like a movie trailer. I've got snippets of memory. Yeah. We're in the village called Shinke by a river for a council meeting with elders. We took our helmets off and lay our weapons down. This insurgent walked up behind me, took an axe from under his robe, and sank it in my head like he was chopping a log.
Sank it into your head.
Trying to get it out for a second bite, which would have killed me. And the man on my left fired his weapon and shot 2 rounds into the kid before he could strike again. The axe hit me on my left back, the back of the skull on the left.
How deep would it have gone into your brain?
3 inches.
911, this is Ryan 0. Say again the nature of the wound. 911, I say again, the nature of the wound is an axe. 100 over.
My brothers thought I was dead, my platoon brothers. The medic started bandaging me up. That's to save my life. And I was medevaced out by a Black Hawk, an American Black Hawk.
They talk about the golden hour. You know, from the time of first injury to the time reaching the OR, they want that an hour, and every minute outside that hour, the chances of survival drop.
My job was to stabilize people, treat the life-threatening injuries, make sure that they wouldn't deteriorate in the 15-minute helicopter ride back to the operating rooms at Kandahar Airfield. Just really the basics. Package them up, make sure they're still breathing and not bleeding, off they go to Kandahar.
The helicopters are such a vital target. They fly really low to the ground, they fly really hard and fast and make a lot of turns in order to avoid, you know, the possibility of being locked on or being shot at. You're trying to treat the patient, the heat inside and the thumping of the blades, and your adrenaline's going, and you've probably sweat out a couple liters of fluid under your body armor, and at the same time, you're like, are we there yet? Are we there yet?
My name is Master Corporal Paul Franklin, and I was injured in 2006 in a suicide bombing. There's 2 weeks left of our tour. As we drive in through the city gates, all of a sudden, Jeff, my co-driver, calls car right, and at that exact moment, I swerve as hard as I can left. He detonates on the axle, and it lifts our vehicle up through the air, tumbling. I pop out, my left leg's ripped off instantly, my right leg's destroyed, hands and face are on fire.
We got back in from our patrol, and we heard a very large explosion. And the building moved to the left. So we knew immediately it was big, it was bad, and it was one of our patrols.
I remember flying through the air and then just smack, sitting up the side, sitting against the wall like that. And then I was like, uh-oh. And then I knew, as soon as I looked down, I knew I was in trouble. As a medic, I'm like, man, I'm in deep, 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 deep trouble here. I saw my leg 5 feet away, and I reached for my tourniquet, but it's in my leg that's just 5 feet away, so I can't get at it. As soon as I was injured, I knew I had to come home. And I wanted to make it home for my wife and my son, and I knew that I had to make it. I was even thinking, you know, worst case scenario, I'm in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. Recant someone around the world. So, I mean, if he can do that, then I can go shopping in a wheelchair. It's not a big deal.
Did you really think of Rick Hansen in that moment?
I did, yeah.
Paul came in first. He was bleeding significantly and missing a leg. Immediately, he was cared for by the doctor and the physician assistant. And then someone handed me a bag, a black garbage bag, and that was his leg.
Here you're treating somebody who you knew quite well. Is that different? Did that alter things?
Yes, because you think about their family, I think. So whenever I would like to think whenever a medical professional is treating someone, it's always their best. But when it's someone you know, someone you've worked with, you think about their family too. You think, I have to be able to send him home. My husband, Bryce Keller, was with one PPCLI, and Bryce was slated to be on the 7-month deployment that followed mine. I came back the second week of February in 2006, and he flew out 8 days later.
Were those 8 days good?
Oh, yeah. But I came back from being there thinking, why did I ever say that you could go there? You listen to the radio constantly. You check the headlines constantly. You get home and the news goes on the TV and stays on the TV. Military families listen to the news a lot.
I'm in Landstuhl, Germany, in ICU. My wife's there, and it is now 3 days later, and the doc comes up to her and says, we have the leg. And she's like, what do you want me to do with it? And they say some people do a service, some people just throw it in an incinerator. She's just like, just get rid of it. But the funny part is the leg they sent to Landstuhl initially, the reason why it was so late, wasn't my leg. My real leg then came from Kandahar to Dubai and then to Landstuhl. So, you imagine these poor pilots flying around with these legs. That's Franklin's leg. I thought I just flew Franklin's leg. When they were finally doing my final surgery on my right leg, the doctor says, if we cup above the knee, chances of you walking is pretty much slim to none. And he says, what we want to do is not finish that surgery. We're going to wait, and then we'll talk to you about your future, your plans, and all the rest. I said, no. If you see something in there like infection, get rid of it, cut it off. Then they said, well, you realize what the outcome will be. And I said, yes, it's the same outcome, which I knew from the beginning. I'm going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life.
I'd known Debbie. We met in '01, just before the bombings, World Trade Center. She was with me in Germany because they flew her and my parents over to say goodbye. That's how bad it was. I was in an induced coma for a while, for a couple of weeks, I think. My first memory was bagpipes. I was going to be transferred to Edmonton for rehab, and my regiment came in, gave me an honor guard. My platoon, the platoon I commanded before I went overseas.
My greatest moment was when my son walked in the room and he saw me, and I was battered and beaten, and I was not looking good. And my son said to me, can you still play video games? And I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, don't worry about that. And that for me was like, I just laughed at that, and it was great for me. And I knew I couldn't play soccer or skateboard or ride a bike or whatever, but for whatever reason, he chose to ask that silly question, which just made me smile, and I smile ever since because of that.
What was your prognosis?
Probably death, but if I survived, they said I'd be a vegetable for the rest of my life.
Did you know that?
No.
Did Debbie know that?
Yeah. But Debbie didn't give up on me. Most women would run away. In fact, some of them did, I understand.
I left for work, and I heard while I was driving, they released the name of one of my friends who had died earlier in the day.
Who's that?
Corporal Chris Reed. And I knew it was bad at that moment because that was my husband's driver. So if Chris was dead, what about the people that were with him? They said 4 were injured and 4 were dead.
On the radio?
On the radio. I called my friend Amy, who had deployed with me, and she said, just get to work, just get to work. So I was actually notified of Bryce's death at work.
I can't imagine how bad that was.
I hope that you never have to know. And that's how that piece goes from when you're treating someone that you know. I don't want their family to have to know that either.
I was the National Repatriation Officer for the Canadian Forces from 2008 onward, pretty much towards the end of the mission.
And what would be a one-sentence description of that job?
From the moment of death to internment, and then sometimes after, to ensure everything goes right. I was very proud of what the Canadian Forces did. You know, we heard a lot of things in the news, the Americans, the British, you know, how they bring them in at night. So yeah, I was pretty proud of being part of that process.
We had 2 Canadian medics killed on my rotation, Corporal Mike Starker and Corporal Wilmot. And I escorted Mike's casket all the way back to Calgary. You know, all the fears and, you know, the emotion of, you know, what am I going to say to his wife? What am I going to say when I get home? What am I going to see? And then you've lost your friend and you're trying to grieve through that. You know, I had to go down the Highway of Heroes in the front of the hearse, seeing the 50 bridges with the flags. I think I broke down right then in the car and, you know, cried for the next little bit. Every bridge, I think there's 50 of them between Trenton and Toronto, and every highway, and ambulances and fire trucks, and there's nothing on the 401. The police have it all blocked off.
I would say to those Canadians that came out to the bridges and lined the 401, you'll never know the solace that you brought loved ones, to know that the nation, you know, for a parent or for a wife or children, to know people share your grief.
Generally, the protocol is for families to stay with their loved one until Toronto, and then the next day to fly home, and to wait at home for the remains to be released, and then to carry on with whatever burial they've decided on. I refused to leave, so I could bring him home myself.
I remember that as we're coming into Calgary, the pilot announced that you may see 2 military people on the flight. And he explained what we were there for, that they had had the honor of carrying a fallen Canadian soldier home. And you get to see that plane just went quiet. I think the first time I've been on an airplane where the whole plane was just dead quiet on landing, people didn't know what to do. There's people crying on the plane, and they were clapping when we got up, and again, it was just another whole flood of, you could see the sorrow, it's like every Canadian felt the loss of this Canadian soldier. This pride that people showed that you're not used to.
November 11th, the day for the fallen. But the rest of the year, think about the wounded that were there when, who are facing huge challenges in this country right now, huge challenges.
Injured Canadian soldiers are well treated within the Department of National Defense. As that wounded soldiers for 3 years that they cover you, absolutely brilliant, world's best. As soon as they leave the Department of National Defense, suddenly they fall under the purview of Veterans Affairs, and everything falls apart.
The soldiers of World War II, Korea, were treated with security and dignity because of their monthly pension. Unfortunately, post-June 2006, we have two standards of veterans, the haves and the have-nots. We already have homeless veterans.
Veterans Affairs asked me to prove that I have no legs so that I can get nursing benefits and shopping benefits and house cleaning, which is the thing that I use. So within that, I have to prove that I have difficulty doing housekeeping. Now, I have to prove that every single year. I have to prove I have no legs every year. And sure enough, they stepped up into the silly world and said, okay, he doesn't have to prove it every year. He only has to prove it every 3 years. It should simply say, are you permanently disabled, yes or no?
I had bad PTSD episodes in Edmonton.
Memories, flashbacks, what?
Yeah, everything. I couldn't read about anything about Afghanistan or watch on the TV. And I was terrified of uniforms. Of course, my friends all visited me in uniform to make me feel good. But I was just howling at Debbie. I remember screaming at her, foul things at her. She would hide our daughter Grace away in the basement. I remember thinking, this is what it's like to be insane. I could feel it coming on. I was powerless to resist it. At Halloween, I had a bit of a bad go because the fireworks sounded like RPGs and they triggered my PTSD. But I came home and put Noah to bed, my son Noah, to bed, and that calmed me down.
I got out of the hospital the day after spring break ended. And so Simon was walking to school. And I said, I'm gonna walk you to school and maybe do show and tell. And I ended up walking to school. It was very difficult. It was only a half a kilometer walk, but man, oh man, it was a really difficult thing to do. And my son's looking down and he's looking for the cracks and he wants to make sure I don't trip.
I married Debbie in 2010. Yeah. I was not going to be married slumped in a wheelchair. So I practiced standing up for long enough to save my vows. It was like, couples practice for the first dance. Yeah, we practiced for my first stand, and that was our dance. Yeah.
People say, was the Afghan mission worth it? And I would suggest, this is my own thought, I would suggest the only ones that can truly answer that are the loved ones of the fallen.
I have regrets of a personal nature. But that's what my husband and I wanted to do. We wanted to be soldiers, and soldiers deploy. I don't see our time there as wasted.
We brought them back with poise, dignity, involved the families, and in the end, the nation involved itself. Nobody organized this. And I think maybe the Highway Heroes will stand as a lesson for Canadians, and particularly for Canadian politicians as they cheer that there is no good outcome to war.
As we went into the post-op Medusa phase of our deployment, we went back to Fort Martello to do true counterinsurgency. It was very much like Fort Apache. That was an analogy we used quite often. Absolutely. It was a fairly large footprint, an embattlement on top of a mountain, about 100 kilometers north of Kandahar City. If the Taliban were going to slink back to their IED ways and terrorizing the locals, then we had to get the locals to be very pro-Afghan government. And that's where having a CIMIC team like Sergeant Bascon to come up and to work with the locals and try to win the hearts and minds over.
I'm a part of the PRT, the Provincial Reconstruction Team, and I've been sent out here to go to the local villages and pretty much see what they need and what they're lacking out in this area. A lot of people didn't know what civil-military cooperation was. You know, they just figured, what do you know? What are you here for? Well, I'm here to make your job a little bit easier. We're not just here to kick in doors. We want to gain their trust so that we can work together and build Afghanistan back up to what it was.
It's easy to hide behind our walls and not trust anybody out there. But we made sure every day we were out in the communities. The pervasive attitude is that don't trust any of the locals now at this point. We don't know who's Taliban, who's not. You know, one minute they're farming in their field, and the next minute they're reaching under the grape field and grabbing an AK-47 and taking pot shots. And that's why sending the troops out on those patrols with Sergeant Bascon was absolutely critical.
I was aware of the dangers that could possibly happen. It's a reality that I come to terms with, that I know where I am, I know what my job is. It's dangerous, but at the same time, let's deal with the situation. Security is definitely a really, really big concern. From what we're hearing, there are quite a few Taliban in the area. When there's no coalition presence, these people are definitely in fear for their lives and for the villages that they live in.
You're there to win the hearts and minds. Part of you was trying to help these people and to win them over, but another part of you to get to the point where to take another man's life or another woman's life it required you to, you know, fill your heart with hate.
They grew up around weapons their whole life, and, you know, gunshots going off doesn't really scare them. You know, it doesn't shock them or anything unless it's directed at them.
That was a very dangerous highway. One time, there was an IED strike on our convoy. Nobody was seriously hurt. My driver received shrapnel from it. One of the vehicles had the tires blown off.
What goes through your head when that happens?
It was almost a car engine block went through my head that day.
My first contact, it was definitely a very friendly contact. The village elder was very welcoming. My duties was to see how I could help them and to hear what they needed.
They're looking for security for the most part, but the biggest one I've encountered in the villages I've been to has been a well or some sort of water distribution system. Talking to the local elders, there's been a drought ongoing for 5 to 7 years. It shows.
Finding that the people are lacking a lot of water, finding that the people are getting sick from the water as well. So we're looking at their generators and water pumps right now and seeing what we can do to repair them.
It seems like a big task.
It is a big task. It is definitely a big task. Most of the villagers' concerns were their water pumps. They kept breaking down because the only way they could get water was through the ground. And we saw several of their water pumps, and we figured, let's see if we can provide spark plugs because that was their biggest issue. We took in about, I don't know, 10 to 13 water pumps to see if we could fix them.
When you start asking for physical resources that are always in short supply anyhow, is it up to the military chain of command to provide? That was not well articulated to us.
Okay, keep your eyes open, stay aggressive, push right through, keep the security bubble, no one comes in.
Being boots on the ground and trying to gain the trust of the people has always been a challenge because, you know, it's like 1 minute they're friendly to your face and then the next minute, you know, they're running away and they're obviously telling people that, you know, don't deal with the Canadians. They're not bringing good aid here. They're bringing bad medicine. And moving around the whole country and talking to different people, it just makes it so difficult to do our job as civil military cooperators out there.
Oh, I think it's not good. Your weapon.
Oh, tell her it's only for protection. We're just here to spread the word about medical aid and women and the children, especially if they're not feeling well, especially if there's a newborn baby too. Okay?
نو البته وای صحیح ده دا خبره صحیح ده نو دا سلاګانې چې په حساب دي زمونږ د حفاظت د خطر دي و موږ دلته د خطر راغلو چې تاسو خبر کو د خپل د کومک چې په
Let her know that we're Canadians, we're the good people.
نو البته وای موږ کاناډیان استو وای موږ ښه خلک استو پوه
I patrolled down, of course, to introduce myself to the elder. He claimed to be 104 years old. And like he said, he waited out the British and he waited out the corrupt government and then he waited out the Russians. And his opinion was he's going to wait out the Taliban and he's going to wait out the coalition forces and his village will still be on the side of that mountain.
Can you let him know that we're still working on his generators and we plan to have them back within 2 to 3 days because we're still trying to find parts. Again, I'm going as fast as I possibly can and trying to get them the help that they need. There's definitely dangers along the way. Anything could happen. We're not only there to do a combat mission, but we're there to help rebuild. Most of the villagers' concerns were their water pumps. They kept breaking down. We figured, let's see if we can provide spark plugs because that was their biggest issue.
We've got a patrol going out. PRT will be going with that. And gotta find some spark plugs. At least somebody must know something about where to get parts. All right, we now have authority to spend money. So that patrol goes out tomorrow.
To get the spark plugs, I believe we drove out in 3 vehicles. Yeah, I thought, you know, it's a market. They sell all sorts of stuff in different markets in Afghanistan, so why not give the market a try to see what they have, you know? There's definitely dangers along the way. Anything could happen. We caused a vehicle accident. We do the warning shots to, you know, keep vehicles back. And one of the bullets happened to actually go in the hood of the truck, and the truck flipped with the driver and some people in it. I had to deal with 2 women that were potentially injured, and they were wearing burqas. And my interpreter, he wouldn't look at the women. Just because women were there, he wasn't going to do his job. We get there, and no, there's no spark plugs. They're selling fruit, bread, everything but spark plugs.
Isn't there some sort of supply chain that the PRT can use to do that? As soon as we're stopped, we're pretty vulnerable. That's a problem.
There's no place here that we can buy them. We need to find out if there's a specific spot in Kandahar city that we can go purchase this stuff from. Didn't want to push any more forward than we were for the spark plugs, just because of any imminent danger that was around us.
Not going to Kandahar? I knew that.
Those damn pumps, they haunted us.
Knowing how far Kandahar was to get these spark plugs, it definitely wasn't worth the drive. The U.S. Special Forces were suspicious of one of the guys that lived in the Outback. It's not the first time I've seen an insurgent getting captured. That was a surprise to me, that they had taken the guy. I had no indication what the Special Forces were doing. They were out there doing their own thing. I was out there doing my thing. The convoy was coming up from Kandahar city to drop off supplies. That was material aid that I could give to the people because winter was coming for them. So I had blankets and warm clothing that I could give to them so that, you know, show them a sign of good faith. And it's routine for whenever a convoy comes into a forward operating base that it gets cleared.
The dog picked up the scent.
The sniffer dog thought that there was an IED.
That's the driver of the Blue Sea camp. They decided they didn't want any of the trucks to come in, even though they only hit off the one. So
just a big piss off, you know, being told over the past couple days that this stuff is coming up, and you know, you want to spread good word to the people of the village. Not gonna have enough time to sort out the stuff, and it's just gonna be one big friggin' mess. So I think we managed to fix 2 out of the 13 water pumps, which was not a huge success. I'm really, really disappointed. You know, what can you do? We tried, and you know, we fell short. I was a little disappointed, but at the same time, it's like, look at where we're at. There's no Canadian Tire around the corner. I found it extremely frustrating, but at the same time, I had to make sure that I had something else to offer them. Okay, can you let them know that on Sunday at 11 o'clock that we're going to have medical doctors?
Sunday, right?
Sunday,
11 o'clock?
Yeah, they can. Some medical doctors are coming up to look at all the villagers of Elback. So anyone that's sick or needs to be looked at. Also dentist for the teeth as well. Sunday.
Can you help me with that guy to release him from the Special Forces?
The village elder from Elback specifically wanted to speak to me because the U.S. Special Forces had taken the guy to question him. I had to tell him that I have no idea where they took him. I don't know why they took him. And obviously, if I did question the Special Forces, they'd tell me, like, you know, operational security can't tell you anything. Like, we could find out how he's doing and, like, where they've taken him. But upon releasing him, that's out of our jurisdiction because the U.S. guys came in Special Forces, so we have nothing to do with that when they came out here.
No, البته وی فقط موږ دومره کولای شو چې دغه په باره کې معلومات ترلاسه کړو لکه چې هغه چیرته دی څه دی یا جوړ دی.
Our job is reconstruction. That's what I'm here for.
And we're fixing their water pumps. How is that helping them?
I understand your side of the fence, where you're dealing with the Taliban and trying to understand what the locals are doing, and you don't trust anybody. But just to come in here blatantly and just say, like, everybody's Taliban, everyone should die, and all this, it's just completely wrong. Like, you have to have some education about coming into this place and knowing what you're getting into. Selling myself to my own people has always been a challenge. You know, sitting there saying that not everyone's Taliban. You have to go out there, you have to interact, you have to attempt to gain the trust of the people. We're here to help rebuild Afghanistan. We're not here to destroy it and make the people hate us. That's not our job. That's not our role.
What she's talking about is how the Americans are, which are very much shoot first, ask questions later. That's the Canadians who, as you say, exercise restraint and judgment, right?
We pay cash for work programs. We do quick impact projects for them. So we're helping their local economy by, like, we're providing for them, you know, help them help themselves type of thing. You know, that's how we're helping them, and that's what I see.
How does that help them? Like Taliban take Jenga truck drivers out of their truck and butcher them in front of this fob. I think that's pretty sad. Cutting off heads of the villagers when we pull out of here. I'm pretty sure some of those dudes are going to lose their heads.
I don't doubt it at all. That's why there'll be a mass exodus.
Is that not sad?
The Taliban is apparently moving into the area and winning hearts and minds of the people. The locals have started supplying the Taliban with supplies, and the Taliban are also stopping people in the area from going to school. At 12:07 yesterday, a weapons cache was discovered by Echo 23 Alpha. In the past several nights, lights were observed in the vicinity of Fob Martello. Well, Martello might come under attack. Again, shocking. PRT is at risk as much as anybody else by the simple fact that they're trying to assist the local population and break the hold of the Taliban. This is a big target. There's many people. It's a highly visible event. If we're lucky, nothing happens. Everything carries on. If we're unlucky, then we have to deal with a whole lot of trouble.
The things that we could impact and did well was the medical outreach. Quite a few came to the medical outreach program that day.
We bring in doctors from the local area, and we provide free medical aid to people on the ground.
We're gonna search women. I guess they can open it up a bit, flatten it to their chest, at least we know they don't have a big bob on them, and then bring them in there and you can search in there, okay?
It's gonna look good, ticking the box for, you know, PRTs doing their job for the good village of Elback, you know, being the first VMO that the PRT is doing on this tour. It's free medical attention, I mean, come on.
Timing, though.
Okay. Going now.
Okay, tell them to stop. Okay, first guy come forward.
We needed to provide security, a cordon outside the fob so that the people can come in. People get checked. They're not going to get in if they don't get checked. If they refuse to get checked, then they'll be turned away. But we'd like everyone to get checked, come in, and get seen by the doctors.
What we're seeing already with the girls already congregating, it's truly amazing, because last time they waited till right at the very end when it looked like we were shutting down, then they brought the women out, and only 4 women at the time. But we've seen other women already sitting up on the other side of the road, so it's pretty good.
It's nothing in depth. It's just some basic medical aid to check out the children to see if there's anything wrong with them, check out the men, women, if they come out to see if there's anything wrong with them, provide them with some basic medication.
The doctors have run out of medication. Okay, apologize. We have no more medication. The doctors can't see anyone else. Next time, we will do our best to treat them all. What I can offer them is the food that we have here. They can take the food, share amongst themselves, older people, little people. Tell them to share. Tell him to share, or I'll take it all away.
It feels great when, you know, you've done something successful for the people that you're helping. Like, it just puts a huge smile on my face knowing that I came here, I did my job, there was success. When you dream big, a lot of things don't follow through, but if you build small, you can see that your successes will come through before the end of the tour. Fort Martello was shut down and everybody left. I've invested so much time into this place, and now I felt like we had taken a step backwards because we had done so much for the villagers. I felt kind of heartbroken. I don't know what's going to happen to these people. You know, I just feel that I could have done so much more, or just stay here longer to get to know them. You know, when you love your job, you invest time into it, you can't help but get emotional when it comes time to leave.
This country will become stable. I have no doubt in my mind. Is it going to be the 10-year Balkan plan? Is it going to be longer? I don't know. Time in Afghanistan moves at its own pace, as we've discovered, and it's going to take a lot of effort, but it will happen.
I just wish that our tours were a lot longer so that we're able to maintain a certain length of trust with these people, so that when it does come time to hand over, you know, at least we were there for a good period of time. Like, 6 months to me is way too short. You're barely scratching the surface in 6 months.
Should we have stayed longer in Afghanistan?
No. I think our people, our timing was perfect. We did what we had to do. We did what we said we would do, and we left when we said we would under these conditions. And I think we stood by our own word.